We're live.
All right, I guess we'll do Andrew, you go first for the order.
Thanks. That'll be easy to remember.
That one's for the real fans. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 402 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
In today's episode, we're going to continue our films of Gregg Araki series with a trio of movies that he made called The Teenage Apocalypse. That is Totally Fucked Up from 1993, The Doom Generation from 1995, and Nowhere from 1997, which we'll get into in the second part. But Nowhere, just a giant amount of just strange cameos from very recognizable faces.
Yeah. Is Nowhere the one that has Denise Richards in it for a second? Like,
Yeah.
she doesn't even
Shout
have
out
a
for you.
line. She's just there. And I'm like, oh, hey, it's my crush. And then she's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, she has like one line and is in a bikini, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, what's up?
I mean, I will take Denise Richards, like a bonus Denise Richards in a bikini in any movie. Like, if I have to choose between no Denise Richards in a movie and just random Denise Richards in a movie,
we're not going to be picky. Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
I think that's a safe stance to take.
We're taking the controversial stances here on Cinematary this week.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to talk about, post Drive My Car. I've been trying to watch because Criterion Channel has, I think, all the other 3 Ryusuke Hamaguchi movies.
Do they have Happy Hour?
They do, and so I'm probably gonna find a weekend where I will sit there and watch Happy Hour just because I've enjoyed all 3 of the movies.
The commitment.
I am. It's gonna be. I'm excited. The one thing I'll say is he's got some very compelling. He's a compelling writer. I enjoy it. So I'll start with first the oldest of the 2, and that's Asako I II from 2018. I think this was the one. Well, Happy Hour got him some acclaim, but this is one that I think I recognized him more for because I remember people talking about it when it came out. But for those who are unfamiliar, it follows Asako, who is a college student, and she kind of has like this like over the top meet cute with this guy named Baku at this photography exhibit, which is it's kind of adorable, and because it's just like so over the top. And so they have like this very, young love, summer fling type romance. But like Baku has his character feature is that he just disappears for long periods of time, which sounds like a wonderful quality that you want in a partner.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny because at one point he's like, I'm going to go get some bread. And it's like at 8:00 at night, and then he's just gone the rest of the night.
Now, when you say he disappears, is there a supernatural thing in the movie?
No, he
just ghosts people.
He just goes because she wakes up the next morning because they're at his friend's house and they're having dinner and they're like hanging out and then like she wakes up the next morning, she's like, "Where's Baku?" And he's just like, "Oh yeah, he just does that. He just And then Baku comes back. He's like, "Oh yeah, like I ran into this guy when I was getting bread, and then I went over to his house and we got drunk, and I forgot I gave him the bread, and then I went to a spa, and then now I'm here." And you're just like, okay. But like she's just kind of Asako is just kind of this very timid, shy character. You can tell that like she hasn't really had any type of like romantic relationships with anyone, and that like this one, she just kind of really throws herself into this romance with Baku. And so that's probably the first like 30 or 40 minutes or so of the movie, and then it time jumps saying that he just disappears for like 6 months, and so she just like the relationship has to end. And so it time jumps to about 2 years later, and Asako is living in, I don't think it's Tokyo, but it's like another like prominent, like a big Japanese city in Japan. And she's working at a coffee shop, and she like sees this guy who looks exactly like him, but with like a much more like a kind of, because Baku has like this like teen heartthrob, like shaggy haircut, looks like a Final Fantasy character. And so she sees this guy who looks like him but seems more like he's, you know, together in life. And so initially this guy, who is not Baku, he's a completely different person, is kind of is infatuated with her, is kind of trying to, you know, spark a relationship, but like she's just like completely shut down from him, because I think like in the back of her mind she thinks that like it's Baku punking her.
He's gonna leave.
Yeah. And so then finally after a while she realizes no, like she has to come to the like, oh, this is a different person, like. And so then like the rest of the movie is really interesting, because it's kind of her having to fall in love with this person and kind of get over this like made up fantasy that she kind of created for herself, and then it time jumps about I think another 5 or 6 years, and she's in a much more committed relationship with this guy. His name's Rohai. They live together. They got a cute little cat that runs around their house. And then a friend who you had met in the first part of the movie from when she was growing up and dating Baku, comes into town and kind of stirs up all that stuff and reveals that Baku is now like this like very well-known model and movie actor. And so it kind of like spurs Asako, you know, she's been living like this very not boring, but like gosh, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Mundane?
Like domestic. No, just like very domestic life. Like she has a partner. They go like on the weekends to like this festival where they're like eating all these oysters and other good food that I was like, this fucking sounds awesome. Like why are you
They
complaining
go
about this?
buy bread without abandoning each other in the process.
That's a big thing. Yeah, that's a big thing. And so, you know, it's kind of this push and pull between this kind of this fantasy relationship that she had, that she really never kind of got to complete, and kind of fighting this urge to kind of live this domestic life. And I won't spoil the ending, because I think it goes in this interesting direction that I was like a little apprehensive to at first, but then reading some reviews and thinking about it later, I kind of appreciated it, because I thought there were some nice perspectives on her point of view. But I really liked it. It's I think that, like I mentioned before, Hamaguchi's really good at kind of laying out these scenarios and kind of exploring these worlds in fascinating ways. He kind of creates these characters who are just kind of unique is a kind of basic word. They just kind of have like these very set definitive character traits that you kind of are annoyed by, but at the same time feel very relatable to a degree. You know, Asako, I was reading some of the Letterboxd reviews and people are just like, fuck Asako, like she seems like a shitty person. But then like then I was like reading Kristen Yunsu Kim has a really nice perspective on it, where she kind of talks about like, yeah, this is just kind of this girl who you know, I think that they portray like this this idea of kind of, you know, you have these relationships developed in your head with somebody that really, you know, it sounds nice on paper, but in reality it's not the same thing. And so she's, for, you know, even though she kind of has like this very settled domestic life, a strong partnership with this person, like there's something about this on paper relationship with this guy who she, you know, had a 6-month fling with in college, that sounds that like that's where she should be living. Like she should be living just in, a little bit in that chaos. And to me that was kind of, I think that Hamaguchi explores that in a fascinating way. I think that this movie, you know, again, like it didn't sit with me totally 100% well, like right after it ended. But the more I thought about it, I think it does kind of capture just that uncertainty and how we kind of not even just like in romantic relationships, but just in relationships in general, we kind of have like this is what we think the relationship is, but then there's a human being with like thoughts and feelings and things
and
on the
like
other side of
that conception of what the relationship is being colored by relationships you've had in the past, and like projecting things onto this relationship based on things that you have experienced from other people. You're now assuming everybody is going to do.
Exactly. And so I kind of, I don't know, I really vibed with that. So this one was good. It's right now on Criterion Channel with the next one I'm going to talk about, as well as his first film, Happy Hour. But
why did I think this movie was about a clone?
It's because it has the picture. The poster has like two of her.
It's actually just like, here's the first part of her life, here's the second part of her life.
Yeah, I mean there's two. The actor who plays Baku is also the actor who plays Rohai, but they're not the same person. They're not like related in any way.
So I think I've seen the trailer for this, and I think that I thought I saw that actor in two roles or whatever, and thought that like that must have been Asako I and Asako II, but no, different thing.
There's no clones. It's just two. I mean, that's what Asako thinks for at least 25 minutes in the movie. So
yeah.
The other one I watched a few weeks ago, but this was the other movie of his that came out in 2021, Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. And honestly, I might like this one more than Drive My Car, which I liked. But this one was this. I told Michael last week that he would enjoy this because I feel like he's also somebody who enjoys like short story movies where you just like you have a movie which is like three different stories. And this one, compared to a movie we talked about earlier this year, My Home, which had three stories but like waned in quality.
My Home? It was called something else.
Is it My Home or
House? Something House?
Or The House, or whatever the stop motion Netflix movie was.
Right.
Whatever that movie was, but it's three separate stories, and it like kind of wanes in quality. This one I feel like is like steady, if not getting better in each one. And so they each follow a female character. The first one is this woman who is, you meet her with her best friend, and her best friend's telling her about this like guy she met, and how they like had this whole romantic kind of, they met each other and then they had like this whirlwind night and all this stuff. And you can, if you're familiar with like, some of his other films, especially like Drive My Car, where it has like these kind of long monologue scenes, like you have this long monologue scene of her explaining this whole attraction and meeting with this guy. And I guess, part of the way through the explanation, the woman, the protagonist that you're following realizes that this is like an ex-boyfriend of hers. And her friend does not know that. And so that like you follow this kind of like strange love triangle between the three of them. The second story is about this. There's like a guy, there's a professor who like has put out this book. And there's a student this guy who is sleeping with this woman who the guy, he just doesn't like this teacher for whatever reason. He's just like that. He's like, no, I hate this guy. And so when he learns that the woman he's sleeping with, who is married, a little bit older, like kind of has a crush on him and enjoys his writing, he's like, you should honey trap him. And so like the majority of the story is her trying to is her reading this book that he wrote that like has this very erotic scene, and she's just like reading it to him, trying to like seduce him into having sex with her. And then it just kind of falls apart after that. And then the third one is about this woman who goes to her hometown for a high school reunion and runs into this other woman at the train station, thinking it was this friend of hers from high school that she hadn't seen in forever, only for both of them to realize once they've gotten to this woman's house that they don't know who the hell either of them, who either of them are. Like they've never met in their lives. They both just thought they were somebody that they recognized. And it's like this really like, it's really like this really wonderful, like strange like interaction for the rest of the movie, for the rest of the story.
Do they become friends?
Kind of like they have this nice day together. And it's and I think the point of it is kind of like they both have these kind of things that are like lingering on their minds that they just kind of want to get out, and there's something about, you know, talking it through and kind of exploring it with a stranger that like helps them through both of the problems that they're kind of dealing with. But no, I thought all three were pretty good. I think you know, it reminds me a little bit of Drive My Car, where they each have like kind of these one location, like relatively single shot monologue sequences where you know, he kind of just takes you into a bunch of different directions, you know, like for instance, when you're at this person's house and they're talking and you're slowly realizing, as well as they're slowly realizing, that they have no idea who the hell each other are. It's just kind of like a fun sequence to kind of take take part in. And the thing I like about Hamaguchi's films, at least the ones that I've watched, is he's very good at like writing these scenarios that kind of take you on these long winding pathways that kind of come back and relate to parts at the beginning, but just like they really like take you on these journeys within these like 10-minute long sequences that are just very like kind of deeply satisfying and you know, very literary in a way. And so
are all of his other movies original screenplays? Because Drive My Car is a Murakami story.
Yeah, let me look. I think the others are. I mean, he wrote the screenplay. I think Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is 3 short stories that
he's adapting. Or did he write all 3?
I think he wrote all 3. I'm not seeing adapted, you know.
Cool.
I'm looking at the old IMDb. Yeah, written by.
So you said that you really like him as a writer. Is that why you would you say you like both of these more than Drive My Car because it's like his stories?
I think Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is probably my favorite. Just because I think that, like I said, all 3 stories are very well like tied up very nicely, neatly contained, and I think, you know, emotionally resonant, each like in 3 different ways that you kind of come out of it going like, I don't know, to me I had a very like satisfying experience just kind of coming out of all 3 and thinking about them. I still like, I've been talking to people about Drive My Car recently, and what's up, Cooper?
Cooper's doing all sorts of things over here.
But because people have been talking about like the length of that movie.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the thing I've been saying is like, I don't mind the length of the movie. I think movies need to be as long as they need to be. And the thing that's nice about that one is I think it earns its long length because a lot of it is just like these really long monologue sequences or kind of introspective, you know, driving sequences. And I think all of that kind of leads into you know, so that it leads to the conclusion being very resonant because you've had all of these, you know, these character moments, these introspective moments, you know, you've been sitting there for 2.5 hours to that point. And so when you know, the kind of big final scene happens between him and the girl when they go to the burned down house, like there's something that I think that it emotionally hits you more, not because of like necessarily the dialogue, but just more like you've been sitting here for 2.5 hours, just really like getting inside the psyche of both these characters, and they really haven't emoted very much. And so then they finally just break down, and like you finally go, like there's just like this elation of emotion. And I think he just does that so expertly.
Definitely a fan of directors who let their movies be the exact length they need to be, whether that's very long or very short.
Yeah. And so that's I've been having that conversation for whatever reason about Drive My Car, because people are just like, it's 3 hours, and I'm like, well,
there's lots of movies that are 3 hours.
Yeah, I'll be for transparency purposes. It came out of a conversation when I said that Everything Everywhere was too long. So
that is true.
So then it just dovetailed into other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, highly recommend both of those. And if you haven't seen Drive My Car, watch Drive My Car also. Both the ones I talked about are on Criterion Channel, and Drive My Car is on HBO Max.
Nice.
So, yeah, you're gonna bring us back into the we got away from the video essays for a while.
Right. You've been safe for too long from the video essays. But yeah, I did not watch any proper movies this week because I had 3 Gregg Araki movies to watch. I did, however, watch a long feature-length video essay called Disney's FastPass, A Complicated History. It is from a YouTube channel called Defunct Land, which makes these I think really, stat and history heavy analyses of theme parks with a particular emphasis on Disney theme parks. And Michael told me about this video quite a while ago when we were planning out the Lefty video essay series. And I did not end up watching it then because it seemed like a daunting task. It's an hour and 45 minutes. But I saw somebody log in on Letterboxd, and they said something about the guy who makes the videos for this channel. His name is Kevin Perjurer, and praising his ability to talk about Disney and all the ins and outs of Disney without necessarily coming across as a fan or even approving of Disney's existence / business decisions. Mm-hmm. So I had, time to kill, and I decided to pull up this video essay, and I did get really sucked into it. It is about lines and the philosophy of queuing. The first part of it is what is a line? And here are all the different ways that people form lines for things. And it turns out Disney has actually been a pretty big factor in why so many lines are the way they are. I believe, if I'm remembering the video correctly, that Disneyland or Disney World, I forget which, was the first place to ever institute snaking lines to make the line for a ride seem shorter than it actually is, which is why we now have snaking lines in airport security, for example. But this is just this video is sort of an exhaustive history of the FastPass system at Disney and all the different systems they tried to put in place before it. And then all the different ways they've tried to tack stuff onto it afterwards to make it more profitable or less logistically nightmarish or whatever. And like I said, very stat heavy. I got a bit lost in the stats at times. But in that way, it's kind of similar to a John Boyce video, which I know Cam talked about a couple of weeks prior. This guy, Kevin Perjurer, is really good at making something really dry like this, very compelling, and not only compelling, but meaningful and feels important by the end of it, because it does eventually get to the place that a lot of Lefty video essays get to, where he doesn't really show his hand about the political side of things at the beginning, but eventually once you're an hour plus in, he's and here's how the Disney FastPass system is actually about class warfare, but he's kind of built it up so much at that point. He's made the case that yeah, I can totally see why that is the case. And one thing that kind of makes this stand out, I think, is I guess there's 2 things that make it stand out. One is his use of graphics. A lot of YouTube video essays, if they're not made by people like ContraPoints who are getting in front of the camera and filming themselves and doing something really big and theatrical, a lot of them are just, stock footage or people talking over clips of movies or whatever. And for a lot of this is digital images that he has created or he has paid somebody to create, these big diagrams, kind of like a John Boyce video would have, that can be really interesting. And then the other thing that makes it stand out to me is that eventually the video essay takes a sharp left turn into like an actual like computer simulation of a supposedly theoretical theme park that he like paid an engineer to make, to illustrate a point about theme parks and lines and money and things like that. That's like really, did not have to do that. Like really extra in the best way. Like just grateful that he decided to go the extra mile and include this whole ass thing tacked on to what was already like a very well researched and argued piece. So again, the one negative for me is that I did get lost in it a couple of times. But aside from that, I think it is very good, and would recommend people check it out, especially if they, like us, are skeptical to critical of the Disney company.
And this is a perfect day to address that, since
Yeah.
it's May the 4th be with you. We're recording this on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And like, so like they were going to put something today. Like, why? Disney and Star Wars are multi-million, billion-dollar companies. Like they don't need any other help marketing their bullshit. So like, why are we helping? I don't know.
Right. I would like to market anti-Disney propaganda.
Like I'm just, I'm just like, why? I don't know. I just like I couldn't deal with it today, people. I'm just tired. I'm just tired. Strangely, that wasn't the most, exhausting news cycle item of the day.
May the 4th.
That wasn't, there's been other stuff this week.
I work at a super, super nerdy school, and I actually got through the day only hearing somebody say, "May the 4th be with you" once.
Well, and that's the silly, thing is like, it's not like counterculture, nerdy culture. It's when your movie makes like $1 billion when it comes out, it's not, what we're about to talk about is counterculture.
True. Yeah.
That is not counterculture. That is culture.
Unrelated, or I guess mostly unrelated. I saw a really good tweet today of somebody talking about the way that the Disney Star Wars trilogy was like going out of its way to not be like the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
But they didn't really account for the fact that a lot of the kids who would be watching it grew up on the prequel trilogy and actually kind of like them.
That is true. And I like how they also reacted in a way to the rejection of The Last Jedi, which is the best Star Wars movie out of all of them.
It is. And I agree. Yeah.
And they responded to that by just that's what they make now is just like don't worry, like we're never gonna do that again. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I always say that in a galaxy far, far away, there's like 7 fucking characters that we just use over and over again.
True, yeah.
So, on that anti-Star Wars rant, we'll go into a break. We're going to talk about the Teenage Apocalypse trilogy after this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you should be imprisoned if you say "May the 4th be with you."
Agreed. I'm going to go to the bathroom.
You pay taxes and say that, you should be in jail. I'm fine saying that on the stream. If you pay taxes and you say to somebody's face, "May the 4th be with you," I think you should be imprisoned. That's my feelings. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I don't really give a fuck what you think either way, but if you feel inclined. I mean, you're an adult. Come on. If you're not an adult, say it. It's whatever. I need like a. I guess I could just monologue. I could monologue like it's a Hamaguchi movie. Talk about something. They always talk about stuff that's profound, though. I got nothing profound to say, really, guys. I'm just, tired. I'm just tired. I did shit on Star Wars, but I'll be honest. I might watch the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but it'll be just like on like a I like you and McGregor reasoning. But I just know it's gonna be fucking stupid. But I'll probably watch it. Maybe. I don't know. It's just like at this point, it's just so boring because again, it's just I don't know. Like these people, I'm just gonna just kind of talk, abstract. Like these people who like desperately thought that Sam Raimi was gonna bring something unique to Doctor Strange to like, I mean, at this point, like you're just kidding yourself if you think that anybody, I mean, they get not Martin Scorsese, but like they could get like Wes Anderson to make a Marvel movie and they would still be within the Marvel formula. Like, it's just like, doesn't matter who's behind the camera. It's just feeding the beast. And like, it's just funny because I've read these early reviews of Doctor Strange 2, and it's people just like, I really thought Sam Raimi was going to bring, no, he just get your fucking paycheck and move along with your life. I don't know. Anybody going to go see Doctor Strange 2 this weekend? I'm not. Might watch it at another time. I don't know. I didn't even hear it's very entertaining. People like Doctor Strange? I'm just talking to myself, Andrew, so I'm trying to keep the momentum going.
I could hear you talking to yourself as soon as I put my headphones down, and I was like, is he just gonna keep going?
Yeah, I rambled a little bit about Star Wars and Doctor Strange and just talked.
Are you gonna go see the Doctor Strange?
No, that's what I was just telling the audience that I can't see. I'm probably not gonna go see it. I might maybe later once it's like not insane.
Well, I've heard that it's bad.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Like, I've heard it's not. Well, that's my point that I was making to the abstract audience was, it's just if you kid yourself and say, oh well, they got Sam Raimi, he's gonna inject like some cool stuff. Like, he's not. He's getting a fucking paycheck and he's gonna feed the beast. Like,
nobody has successfully done that. Like,
I would say
their auteur thing.
I would say the closest is probably Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler, I think, but even that is minimal.
Yeah,
in terms of how much Ryan Coogler's in that movie.
Exactly. So it's just like it was just funny because I saw people like the little rapid reactions on Twitter, and people were like, "I really expected." I'm like, "Why are you expecting that still?"
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So I don't know. All right. Let's get Gregg Araki in a Marvel movie. That sounds like a good combo. Just like Thor, like having hardcore sex with Captain America.
That's what that would have to be. Yeah. That would certainly fix the why do Marvel characters not fuck problem.
It would. Yeah. That's immediately. Like just make like the Doom generation, but it's like an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
It's just 3 Avengers on a road trip. Did you? No, I won't belabor the point anymore. I was just gonna say, did you see that? I think you were the one who shared it. That I saw it from the person who was like, we should have like Marvel make like indie movies, but set in the Marvel universe.
Oh God!
And then I just and then I wanted to leap out of a window.
Deep sigh listening to that.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, audience. No, I was talking to the audience that they've been listening to me ramble for 5 minutes. Alrighty. I got the Ebert review for Doom Generation. So
Oh yeah.
here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 402 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to cover the Teen Apocalypse Trilogy by Gregg Araki. We're going to start it out with 1993's Totally Fucked Up. It stars, we'll just preface that all 3 of these star James Duvall. So
They do, yeah.
But James Duvall, Rocco Bellick, Susan Bashid, and Janae Gill. It follows gay, alienated Los Angeles teens who have a hard time as their parents kick them out of their homes. They don't have any money, their lovers cheat, and they are harassed by gay bashers. Araki classified it as, quote, a ragtag story of the, fag and dyke teen underground, a kind of cross between avant-garde experimental cinema and a queer John Hughes flick. The film makes extensive use of handheld video camcorder, which one of the characters uses to provide insight into the lives of other characters through interview-like discussion. The technique became popular through the 1990s, evident also in such later films as Reality Bites, American Beauty, and The Blair Witch Project. Araki himself revisited the camcorder idea in his 1997 film Nowhere, which we'll talk about at the end of this. Araki has said they shot on 16 millimeter film without permits, and that the film had, quote, virtually no crew, that he operated the camera himself, accompanied by only a sound person and a producer PA as well as the cast. So yeah, let's jump into Totally Fucked Up. This was, out of the 3, probably my favorite.
And it was my least favorite. So I'm curious to, I think that Michael said in the Slack that it seems like everybody has had a different response to all 3 movies, like everybody on the Cinematary crew who's watched them. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to kind of bounce ideas back and forth about these.
I'll say I didn't like any of these more than Living End. I thought that's still the best one I've seen. This one, though, this is at its best, at least in my opinion, when they're just like wandering around like 3 a.m. Los Angeles, like when they're like walking around, walking through
the Chevron station.
Yeah, but it like has like this, like I really like this kind of I'm trying to kind of good comparison, but like there's just this kind of like urban beauty to, like, gas station lights and fast food, fast food restaurants and things like that. Like there's just something kind of nice about that setting. It's generally
the characters talk about it. They talk about like the city at night when everybody is asleep, feeling like a ghost town, like a bomb's been dropped and we didn't notice or something like that.
Yeah. And so like at its best, to me, that was what I liked the most, when you just kind of have those wandering moments where they're just kind of talking and just rambling around. And then when it got into more of like the story structure and like the relationships, I wasn't as like engaged into that.
Yeah, it really turns on a dime, or maybe turns on a dime is the wrong phrase, because it's actually maybe more so gradually that you don't notice it happening, that it becomes a movie that has a plot and has like relationship dynamics that it has been expecting you to keep track of throughout the movie, because there's so many characters in this movie. Like
and I thought it was going to be more of like a Dazed and Confused, like just everybody, like Nowhere is
kind
more
of flitting in and out of the focus. Yeah. And like I just wasn't really following or internalizing a lot of these different dynamics until like it all really matters, and I was lost for the last part. But I guess also a big part of why I wasn't internalizing a lot of it is because I found just a lot of it to be pretty boring. I agree with you that like there is some immaculate vibes on display when the characters just kind of wandering around or inhabiting spaces or listening to music or whatever.
Well, I forgot what the other guy's character's name is, but like the scenes with the James Duvall character and the guy who he's seen for a while, and they just kind of like are wandering around LA and just talking. Those were my favorite scenes. Yeah,
the kind of walk and talk before sunrise sort of vibe. That stuff is fun. And I generally enjoy the overall aesthetic of the movie. I like the way that they use the camcorder and like this VCR or VHS scan line, like CRT television glare thing every now and then. It's kind of a way of adding sort of a film on top of the image. And when I say film, I don't mean like movie, but like a layer on top of it. That reminds me of like I mentioned Gregg Araki being big into shoegaze last week. Like it reminds me a little bit of just the wash of effects that is like on top of your typical shoegaze song. Like, beneath there's like guitars and drums and stuff, but the main thing that you're experiencing is like the texture of like how it all blends together. And I think that he uses the technology to do that in really interesting ways. I just couldn't get down with the story here, unfortunately.
Well, I wish it was more meandering. I think that would have made it more interesting. I think these three especially, and even Living Into a degree, they seem very related to like television, like I think like Gregg Araki clearly is very clearly very fascinated by just like TV's hold on people, especially at like this period of time when you have, I think this is kind of like that MTV VH1 like the heydays of that, especially with like the characters that we're seeing here.
Doesn't a character say something about TV? I don't remember if it's in this one or in Nowhere, but somebody's saying something about like, well, people have to have something to dedicate their lives to other than TV.
Yeah, it's one of the movies. Somebody says that, but yeah, all three of these movies, and even Living Into a degree, like they have this relationship to television and kind of like television's hold on culture. And I think that it's very like it kind of has this TV effect to a degree. You mentioned it has this film layer, but I think it also has like this TV layer because all of the sequences are very like kind of quick and disjointed, and it kind of feels like almost like channel switching a lot. Like all three of the movies feel like channel switching.
That's a good way to think about it.
They're very like erratic and chaotic because it's not like you're sitting there just watching one channel. It's kind of like you're switching through a bunch of different things, and you kind of have like this heightened violence, because you think of TV and people's relationship with it, and just kind of the violence of TV at this. This is post. Like Rodney King, this is OJ trial, even going back as far as like Vietnam, like just seeing like this, this violence kind of entering the home via the television set.
Right.
Like I think that all three of these movies have this relationship to that's kind of fascinating.
And it does feel like flipping channels in terms of like how it's edited together too, because it's a movie that's presented in like 15 vignettes or something.
Yeah.
And the way that it switches back and forth between those vignettes, like it is stitched together with these documentary style, like talking head interviews. And there will be like text with like heavy scan lines over it on the screen. That it just does feel like somebody is like flipping from channel to channel as you're kind of jumping back and forth between these things. There's not necessarily like closure at the end of the scene. We're just like, okay, on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think that and I think that there's just kind of something that's kind of what keeps you at arm, like to your point, like what's difficult to kind of latch onto the characters because you kind of feel like you're flipping around so much that you never really settle with any characters. Like you kind of understand to a degree what the dynamics are, but you don't really you're never like sitting with one character for long enough to really kind of understand who they are. And so then like it kind of barrels its way to the end, and like the end happens, and that wasn't shocking. There's literally a whole thing about LGBTQ teens committing suicide and like and high numbers, like they have like a news article about that, and so it wasn't like a totally shocking thing, but there's just kind of I think all three of these movies have this kind of like when they all have this very abrupt kind of, I'll say violent, but just kind of like a very abrupt violent end. And I think the thing that Araki does really well on all three of them is that it kind of like you're in this kind of disjointed fantasy to a degree. Like none of the three movies feel like they're like in any sort of reality, and then like the end kind of like pulls you out and you're stuck in reality for like probably not longer than a minute, and then the movie ends. And I think like I'll give it, even though I wasn't a big fan of the other two, like the ending of Doom Generation is super, super good.
I agree. Yeah.
So, anything else on Totally Fucked Up before we move on?
I guess we could talk a little bit about James Duvall's character. Like, he was the one that I latched onto here, but that was partially because I had already seen him in Nowhere.
Yeah.
And so like, oh, I know that guy. And then he shows up again in Doom Generation, right? I had a really hard time with him here, though. I'm also having a hard time remembering, like, what is his character here versus what is his character in Nowhere, because I feel like there's a lot of blurring together.
Yeah, he's a little bit less prominent in Nowhere.
This is the one where he's like max apathetic, right?
Yeah.
Like he's going on dates with this guy and he's having sex with this guy, but like at no point does he seem like he's actually enjoying it. He's just kind of there. And he is the character that we're mostly following. And that seems to be sort of the ethos of this movie. And to a certain extent, like, that is the feeling that Gregg Araki is exploring in all three of these movies. People who are just sort of like drifting through life sort of aimlessly without much of a like a drive or a goal. They're just, just vibing in a way that, like, I don't know if Gregg Araki is, I don't think he's saying it is good or bad. It's just like, here is a reality that his generation's teens are kind of experiencing.
Well, and I think it's all three of them. I can see, we'll talk about I have the Ebert review of Doom Generation where he's just like, but I think it's something that I would be curious to hear how, like, teenagers right now would react to these movies, because
they would love the fashion.
They would love the fashion.
Is back in style. Yeah.
But I think, it's so like, they're very abrasive, and but I think that like Gregg Araki does have this really keen sense of satire that he's kind of running through all three of them, but he just does it in such a, you kind of have to get on his wavelength because it's so abrasive and it's so volatile the entire time that you kind of have to get on his level. But at the same time, like we talked about last week, like, there's just this anger to it as well, because it's just like these people are kind of drifting, and I don't get the sense that he's saying they're drifting because I think to me it seems like he's kind of going like, what else are they going to do? Like, what else do you want us to do?
Right.
What future is there for us to strive for other than to just do this and then die?
And that's what makes it an entry in the Apocalypse trilogy, the Teenage Apocalypse trilogy. This is, I guess, the only movie where in the three where a character stops to talk about the apocalypse. Though I guess there's the thing in Nowhere where somebody has like a doomsday prophecy that they share. But in Totally Fucked Up, we have like a more grounded, realistic moment where a character is talking about climate change and talking about how, like, well, isn't it fucked up that we are the generation that's going to see all this end? And like, if you are sitting with that feeling, like the desire to like go out and make a bunch of money for your boss is like, it's, I don't know, does not feel particularly empowering or inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead. Let's move to the Doom Generation. Since this one, so this one like I mentioned, this has James Duvall as well, but it also stars Rose McGowan, who I think is a little bit more well known, and Jonathan Shaik.
I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's one of the main characters in Splendor. We'll watch next week.
But it follows teens Jordan White and Amy Blue, who pick up a handsome drifter named Xavier Red. Red tends
I
to
did not know that they had red, white, and blue as their last names until just now. That's funny.
Yeah. Red tends to create combustible situations. For example, a trip to a convenience store leads to a clerk getting decapitated.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, the trio voyages through small town America, where Amy is accosted by various men claiming to be her lovers, and she and Jordan find themselves drawn to Xavier. But can any amount of sex lift the sense of doom hanging over them? The characters of Amy Blue and Jordan White are based on the Mark Bayer comic strip Amy and Jordan. The Doom Generation was Araki's first major film debut. This is the one I think he got a lot of acclaim for. It was shot mostly at night during January 1994 in Los Angeles on a budget of $800,000. The crew avoided well-known landmarks and shot in underdeveloped areas of urban sprawl to give the film an apocalyptic feel. The budget allowed Araki to hire a professional crew, making it the first of his films not shot by himself. And in 1995, Roger Ebert said, "Words like disaffected, distance, and deadpans flew from my mind onto my notepad while I was watching The Doom Generation. This is the kind of movie where the filmmaker hopes to shock you with sickening carnage and violent amorality, while at the same time holding himself carefully aloof from it with his style. He would be more honest and probably make a better movie if he got down in the trenches with the rest of us." Yeah, since you said this was your favorite, what did you like about Doom Generation?
I liked it more than Living End too. Although I think that Living End is definitely the more historically important of the movies, right? It feels more like a landmark in queer cinema, whereas this one, of all the ones we've talked about so far, feels the most like a fun genre movie. Which, to get into places we'll go in the series later, like that's kind of what I like most about Gregg Araki, like the way that he plays with genre in movies like Splendor, which is a riff on the rom-com formula, and then Smiley Face, which is kind of a riff on the stoner comedy formula. I really liked this like version of it's kind of a Bonnie and Clyde road movie. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a Tarantino riff. Mm-hmm. Though I don't know exactly what Tarantino had out in 1985. Was that the year that Pulp Fiction came out?
Yes, I'll look. I'll be the person to look that up.
So
that was just after Pulp Fiction. So
just
Pulp
after
Fiction
Pulp
and
Fiction.
Reservoir Dogs.
I mean, in that case, like it's maybe unlikely that Gregg Araki is intentionally riffing on Tarantino, but maybe playing with similar material that Tarantino would become known for playing with. It actually reminds me a lot of Death Proof.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, Rose McGowan's in Death Proof. So
she's in Death Proof. Yeah. But I thought also like just on a very surface aesthetic level, I thought this was the movie that looked the nicest. It doesn't have that same like lo-fi VHS shoegazy sort of quality that Totally Fucked Up has, but it like in exchange it kind of looks like a real movie. Like it doesn't look like something that somebody made, with their friends. And like I think that Gregg Araki is a great crafter of images. Whenever he like really gets to flex his muscles in that department, which he does a little bit in Nowhere as well. But yeah, I generally like I think the thing that made this movie stand out for me over the others is just how focused it is. And that's doesn't necessarily mean it's better. They're Totally Fucked Up and Nowhere are doing their own thing with like a lack of focus. That's the idea, is to like being very disparate, sort of like Robert Altman-esque in terms of how your attention is sort of divided between all these characters who are going in a lot of different directions. Doom Generation, we're just stuck with these three people. They have like a very well fleshed out relationship. And the actors playing all three are excellent. And I found it very like tense and funny and compelling. And yeah, this one just like worked for me on a level that the others felt like fun experiments that didn't quite pay off in my estimation.
Yeah, I liked that this one like they all, like I mentioned before, they all live in their own just kind of like made up reality.
Yeah.
I loved the just I don't know. I enjoyed the reality of this one where everybody was just like it was kind of like you were in like Grand Theft Auto, like the video game.
Mhm.
Like it just anywhere you
Yeah.
went, it became wildly violent. You know, like I
Or it's
mentioned,
like you know, to bring up Tarantino again, the scene in Pulp Fiction when John Travolta accidentally shoots Marvin in the back
Mhm.
of the car. Like that scene, almost every scene in this movie feels like that scene. Like there's
Yeah.
something crazy that just happens.
Well, it also has like my personal favorite one was when they go to it's like a bar or something, and Parker Posey's there.
Parker Posey's there.
And
Yeah.
Parker Posey's wonderful because she's one of the people who was like an ex-lover of the Rose
Yeah.
McGowan character, and it's just like and then like they kill the guy she's with, and she's just like over, she's like ah, and like I
Yeah.
forgot what she's doing. She's like just like holding his face. I don't know. I love Parker. Posey.
She eventually puts like a sword through somebody's crotch.
Yeah, like, no, she has a sword and she swings at them and misses and hits the guy she's with and
somebody
just
else.
and
Yeah.
hits him in the crotch, and she's like, "I'm so sorry.
Well, to go back to the idea of the movie having a lot of focus, like Parker Posey's character is a good is like a point on this line that the movie is tracing,
Yeah.
where it's sort of structured like a fairy tale or something, when they like keep running into another one of Rose McGowan's like evil exes. And they like become increasingly like scary until eventually like the last evil X sort of shows up and, you know, causes the catastrophe at the close of the movie.
When you run into Nazis, it usually causes a problem.
Right.
I also like that there's just a random scene with FBI agents saying that they're looking for him, and then it never follows through.
That may be a point against the focus of this movie.
No, I liked it. Part, it was random. It was just like you have this scene with like this FBI officer, like, we gotta find these kids. They're doing stuff, and then you never hear from them again.
Back to that.
I loved it. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think the ending is just so like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Like just in terms of like the last sequence that like it kind of just, to me, it just hit this level where I was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, it's doing like
Thank
a
you.
New French Extreme sort of thing after a certain point. Yeah.
But it does lead to, like I mentioned before, the ending shot where like you kind of just like you've been living in this parallel reality of just chaos where you like go to the fast food restaurant in the drive-thru, and the guy like pulls out a shotgun, is like, I loved you forever.
Yeah. I think that the world these characters inhabit for most of it is really interesting, because you're right that it's not reality. It's not the America that we know, though it's like a heightened version of the America that we know, where like that all of the convenience stores and places they go into have these like huge they live style like propaganda posters hung up. So like instead of like shoplifters will be prosecuted, there's one that says shoplifters will be executed. And Rose McGowan is like standing like perfectly framed in front of it before the first big violent act of the movie goes down. But like
I also like that they have the TV news scene where they just show like all the people massacred in the convenience store, and then the one guy like pops up and he's like, whoa.
And they're both like very badly green screened over it. Very funny that. And like also, when isn't there a part where they're watching TV and there's like some weird like stop motion like black and white violent thing on the screen? I forget. And like it's obviously just a thing that Gregg Araki made up, but James Duvall's character is watching it like, oh, I love this movie or whatever.
I do want, James Duvall's in all three of the movies. This is my favorite James Duvall character.
It's the best James Duvall character.
He's just like happy to be there. He's just like enjoying the ride.
He's very sweet. Like he's very sweet and sad. And I felt like I got to know him on a level that I did not get to know him in the other movies. But like, I think the movie is also pretty sweet as well, despite the fact that it is a movie that is like punctuated at several points by like really extreme violence. and also like sexual betrayal and stuff like that. Like there is something to the sort of joyous fluidity of this movie. Like the subtitle is a heterosexual movie by Gregg Araki, but like it is a heterosexual movie that is like always on the verge of becoming a homosexual movie. And like these characters are sort of they are in like creating their own world together on this road trip that they're taking, and it is like this escape from the oppressiveness of like the America that they're used to. And then like as soon as like it is about to fully tip over into like this totally like bisexual polyamorous utopia that these characters have created with one another, that's
Nazis.
when like the fucking Nazis show up and attack them, right?
Yeah.
It's like, ain't that just the way?
Ain't you want to live in a bisexual polyamorous utopia and then fucking Nazis show up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I appreciate it more than I like it more now.
Good. Glad I could sway you on Doom Generation. Yeah. It's good.
Because we're not going to get anywhere on this one. I feel like so.
Nowhere's rough. Yeah.
So let's Nowhere. I don't have too much on this one. It stars. I mean, it's James Duval and Rachel True are probably two of the main people, but it stars a gazillion fucking people.
Mm-hmm.
There's. I'm trying to think. Christina Applegate shows up in this.
Yep.
Ryan Philippa. James Ritter has a small part.
Apparently Rose McGowan is in this as well.
Yeah, Rose McGowan. Denise Richards shows up. There's a ton of fucking people who like you recognize.
Yeah.
But it's like the main story is it's you have an alienated 18-year-old man who struggles with daily life, fluctuating romantic status with his bisexual polyamorous girlfriend Mel, and conflicting feelings for a shy gay classmate. But it also, I forgot what was the Letterboxd log line for it, which I feel like is a little bit better. It's described
90210 on acid.
Yeah, described as 90210 on acid. The film tells the story of a day in the lives of a group of high school kids in Los Angeles and the strange lives they live. I'm trying to see who are the other people I missed. Beverly D'Angelo has a small role. Heather Graham. I think Heather Graham is the person who has a nice scene with Ryan Philippa where he goes down on her during her period.
Heather Graham's character, like her characterization is that she gets turned on by gore. Yeah. And like there's a scene where somebody talks about getting like eaten by a cat or something, and like that turns her on. It's really weird. They like cut themselves at one point before they have sex.
Yeah. It's tough because you have a bunch of different things happening. So yeah, you have like the James Duval character is in love with the Rachel True character, but she like is dating this other girl and kind of is not committing to him. You also have the whole storyline with the character who is like kind of based on like a 90210 teen heartthrob who picks up the girl and then like rapes her,
ends up raping her, and like physically harms her in the process in a way that's like really, really hard to watch.
Yeah, I didn't like that. And then you have like the other couple, and who like the guy is like really like gets really like juiced up and like beats the guy to death with like a Campbell soup can. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
Is more violent than Doom Generation.
Yeah, but I mean, it also lives in like this just kind of strange, like the reality. This one has probably the most distinct art direction. Like I saw a lot of people on Letterboxd mentioning like any room that you go in this movie is
any
like
bedroom
you go in is just like insane. It's like it's pretty much like if Andy Warhol designed a bunch of bedrooms. This is where it is.
I've seen it described as like the interior, like the mind space of the characters being sort of blown up onto the walls and the decorations, right? So there are characters who have just like 12 TVs stacked up, all like turned to a static channel. There are characters where like there are rooms where there's just huge like Helvetica font, like writing on the wall, like plastering every single inch of the wall. There's like one room, the girl who gets raped like crawls back into her bedroom through the window, and there's just like flowers everywhere because you're supposed to think of her as like this pure innocent girl who has been taken advantage of.
The one room I liked, it wasn't even really a bedroom, was James Duvall's like taking a shower, and like the whole like bathroom is just like white. It's like,
well, he's masturbating. That's like a really great scene too.
but he's
like,
he's masturbating in the shower.
He's masturbating in the shower, and like when you first see him, he is in like this white, like Wonka vision room.
Yeah.
And it's like cutting very seamlessly back and forth between like 3 different sexual fantasies he's having while he's masturbating. And then like his mom knocks on the door, and like now we're not in that mind space anymore. Now we're in just like a normal old bathroom.
Yeah.
So like the way that Rocky plays with like space and like the way that it's visually depicted is really interesting here.
And then all the time, like there's these bugs that are like abducting people.
Yeah. The apocalypse part of this, it's most pronounced in like the world does not actually end in either of the other movies, though. In Totally Fucked Up, somebody talks about like the real ways in which the world could end. Doom Generation, I don't totally understand why it's in the Apocalypse trilogy, to be honest. He made another movie later on down the line called Kaboom that very much seems like it is trying to be movie 4 in the Apocalypse trilogy. But this is the one where like aliens have come to Earth, and there's like some weird like Christian cult who's prophesied that today's doomsday and today's the rapture, and a bunch of characters or a couple of characters like maybe get raptured, like they just get popped out of their clothes and nobody else notices.
Well, that's the whole ending, is that this guy that James Duvall's kind of getting close with, he gets abducted, and then you have
turns into a bug.
He turns into a bug.
Yeah.
And it's I kind of liked it because it was like this kind of Looney Tunes moment, because he turns into a bug and he's like, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, like, it's like a different person.
Yeah.
And like the way that the apocalypse happens is very strange and incongruous, right? Like there are parts of it where there are just like big reptilians walking around. There are parts of it where there's a person turning into a bug. There are parts of it where there's like weird space people in tracksuits, or not tracksuits, but like jumpsuits, running around with guns. And like none of these things feel like they have to do with the others, but it's just like, this is the many facets of like this weird apocalypse that nobody in the movie ever really wraps their head around, or nobody has the full amount of information about.
This one definitely feels the most like he's just tossing a bunch of stuff at the wall and kind of seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And that's why, like, at least with the other two, even though they kind of meander around, like there is still like a kind of, there's like like this is a story. And like, you know, I read 2 different log lines. Like I don't really know what's going on in this one, other than that you just kind of have like all of these separate things happening to different characters. And then you have bugs that kind of remind me of something like, you know, it feels like like Tim Burton's Mars Attack or something. Like it seems almost like Looney Tune
or the
cartoonish
or something.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just like, well, it feels almost just like cartoonish to a degree. So like you have just kind of like this hyper real violence with kind of this cartoonishness to it. In even the people, I mean, like we're describing, like the spaces and the landscapes and the people we're seeing, like everything just feels very cartoonish in not, you know, like again, like that's kind of its reality, that it lives in almost like this one feels almost even more engaged in like that TV space.
Well, if there's one thing that I really appreciate about this whole trilogy, it's the way that it kind of like is incrementally like zooming out from reality, or like becoming more and more abstracted from reality as it goes along. Like Totally Fucked Up is, when I actually watched like the first 30 minutes of it or so with Jesse months ago, and we thought that it was a documentary, and ended up turning it off because it's like playing with documentary style, right? And then Doom Generation is like much more of like a movie, but it's playing in like this weird genre space where like all genre movies are kind of elevated from reality to one extent or another. And this movie is like so far removed from reality that it's not in a genre anymore. It's just like cuckoo land, like Gregg Araki land, right? And your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy that. I was vibing with it for a little while and eventually found it to be kind of obnoxious. Like there were a lot of things that I could tell like, oh, these are jokes, but I'm not laughing at them. This is just weird. I mean, it almost reminds me of like what we talked about with Everything Everywhere All at Once a couple weeks ago. Like when everything is just random, like it just stops being funny after a certain point.
Yeah, I don't. There's definitely funny moments like in these movies, and I think that it kind of just leans more in like the. I would say Totally Fucked Up has more of like the better lines than the other two, but yeah, the other, that's why I think I kind of lost a little bit with Doom Generation and Nowhere, because it's much more just on like the heightened visuals. And like the thing I liked about Totally Fucked Up and The Living End was it had that heightened reality, but then also like he just kind of had like this very it felt like very like film school level like dialogue, but like I think it perfectly worked for the whole vibe that it was going for. Like it, and I felt like it was a little bit smarter than just being kind of film school dialogue.
Sure.
And so like whenever that kind of went away, because the other two movies are very just focused on action, it just kind of gets, at least to me, like I just kind of got exhausted after a while. And I mean, granted, we watched 3 of these, at least, like, I don't know about you, but I watched 3 of these in a row over the course of 3 days, and I was like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I literally sent to our Slack chat the clip from a screenshot from The Simpsons where Marge is just like, kids, can you lighten up a little bit?
Yeah, this was a movie where like I was concerned for the kids involved, right? Like I recently had this feeling when Jesse and I watched the pilot episode of Euphoria.
Oh God.
And I was like, man, if this is even a little bit relatable for Zoomers, I'm worried about Zoomers, right? And I guess that this is doing a similar thing for Gen X, where like if it really was, this much sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like kind of glad I missed that. Like this seems like a lot.
Great.
Yeah, and like even the sex part is like not fun. Like the sex Gregg Araki movies generally like really revel in like physical eroticism. Like he doesn't try to shy away from that being like a dirty thing or a dangerous thing in his movies. He tends to focus on it being like this euphoric bliss that people can share together. And like the way that it's experienced in Nowhere is like really unpleasant for most of it. Like there's a character who has a male character who has pierced nipples, and there's a scene where he's like having sex with 2 women, I think, and they like bite his piercing and pull it out of his body during sex. And I'm like, hey, I don't know if we missed the scene where they agreed to that beforehand, but this seems like not okay, right? There's a scene where like, is it Heather Graham's character? Like they use chocolate as lube. They rub chocolate on her vagina, and he goes like down on her and then comes back up and has like chocolate all over his face.
He's like,
this is disgusting, people. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just a lot,
It's a lot.
I don't know what else to describe it. It's a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Out of the 3, Nowhere is the toughest to kind of. Like I think I would recommend Totally Fucked Up or Doom Generation. You definitely have to be in a specific mood to deal with it because it's not. It has a little bit of a ride quality to it, but then at the end you're just like, I would like to get off now.
Yeah. I knew that Gregg Araki had some like difficult films. Like I knew that Mysterious Skin is like famously a difficult movie. But I did not know like to what extent Gregg Araki was like an abrasive filmmaker in his early years. Like this is like if we're just following his career up to this point, and these are the only 4 movies he's put out: Living End, Totally Fucked Up, Doom Generation, Nowhere. Like those are some rough movies. I think that the reputation that Gregg Araki would have on this podcast, if we were like following them as they came out, would be he's kind of an edgy provocateur. Though like that would not be giving the sincerity of like the emotions behind his films enough credit, but like they are like hard to watch in a lot of ways.
Yeah, all I'm asking, in total honesty, I'm being totally honest. It's like, can we just like go, like can we just have like a chill series? Can we just like take it down a notch?
Hey, Jesse wants to do the Muppets.
That's fine. I'm completely fine with that. There's nothing provocative in it.
You'll like Splendor, I think. Splendor is like such a nice movie.
That's fine. It was just 3 straight days of this, and I was just like, oh my fucking god, dude.
Sorry, I didn't know that these were so rough.
Yeah, let's do a little background before we pick series. That's a group pick.
Yeah,
it's just a group rule. Little background research, and then we can do series. All right. Well, I'll wrap up episode 402 of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. You can, do $1 or $5. Just let us, anything you want to give. If you just want to support the show, we appreciate you. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Masathi, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we're going to continue our Gregg Araki series with, as Andrew mentioned, 1999 Splendor. So hopefully it'll get a little bit lighter.
It's cute.
All right, I just need lighter. I don't care. I just need lighter. Until then, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.